Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In preparation for the brand new Marvel film Black Panther Wakanda Forever, we went back and watched Black Panther last time round, and now we've been to see the new Wakanda Forever and are here to share our thoughts. What did you think of Wakanda Forever, Sam?
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I didn't know too much going on. I know you didn't watch any trailers at all. But generally, I thought it was a good kind of tribute to Chadwick Boseman, the first Black Panther film, and a decent kind of sequel in itself, I think.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
Like there's strong parts in it and there was some weak parts in it.
Yeah.
I feel the Chadwick Boseman stuff, which is mostly the first act,
it comes back throughout, but
is quite good and a good send off for that character. It's good they didn't just ignore it.
I do like a lazy kind of recast.
I did feel like it suffered from similar problems as Thor: Love and Thunder and Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, in that it was good. The general ideas were there, but then towards the end, it kind of petered out. And
I would agree. Yeah, I think although it's a good tribute to Chadwick Boseman, his presence is very missed in this, and no
100%.
one really steps in as the lead. And we've talked, I think, very briefly on the way out that it's quite an overcrowded film in lots of ways.
Yeah, the absence of Chadwick Boseman is very clear, and it was always going to be when such an iconic actor in a role sadly passes away. But they attempt to kind of fill that gap, and I don't think they really do it very well.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, if you see him on screen and there are it's not really a spoiler because we'll try and keep it spoiler free up front, but there are moments where it kind of flashes back to shots of him from the first Black Panther, and you can see that kind of charisma radiating off screen. And unfortunately, even though there are some really amazing performances in this, no one really delivers that same kind of charisma. I was going to say charismaticness, but
it's hard to kind of watch it without thinking of Chadwick Boseman, which definitely
it's kind of the point in some ways, because T'Challa's death, or spoilers, but T'Challa's absence is felt throughout. But so we try and do a little bit of kind of non-spoiler talk.
So I think it introduces a new villain that we haven't seen before. Some people might be familiar with. I didn't know it was going to be them going in, and when they came up, I was quite excited by them,
because the prospect of that character and what comes with them is quite exciting.
And I thought that character was fun. I thought they were good. They seemed quite. I haven't read a load of the comics they featured in, but they seemed quite accurate to that depiction.
I would say so, yeah. Although people are, of course, upset about certain changes with Origins and certain changes with kind of looks and backgrounds and that sort of thing. But generally I think from what I know as well, it's pretty accurate. There's a couple of inclusions of characters which felt a little bit like backdoor pilots, and they're kind of like the laziest parts of the MCU when it's like, here's a character who for some reason is here and we know that they're going to have another film, but just not in the fun way of like, Hawkeye's here, he's going to be in the Avengers next time kind of thing.
And last time round we mentioned how great Andy Serkis, Michael B. Jordan, Chadwick Boseman, who aren't in this. But I think the returning characters are good. Like your M'Baku, Okoye, Everett Ross. It's nice to see them again, and they are fun, secondary characters in this universe.
I would say some of them aren't given too much to do because of that kind of overcrowding. But that's, in an ensemble cast, which is effectively what this is now, it's closer to a team-up film in lots of ways than a direct solo film. Something like the first Doctor Strange or even Multiverse of Madness has a smaller kind of core cast. As you mentioned, there's a handful that deserve screen time, and whether they get it or not is kind of a sacrifice that kind of had to be made for the film, I suppose.
I think one or two of those characters they developed quite well, which I think was good. But I think there's definitely, I enjoyed it being there.
I think some of the stuff that we mentioned last time round about the kind of finale and how it was kind of a little bit lackluster and a little bit kind of generic, I'd say they've learned certain lessons with this one, but it still kind of feels like the script went, okay, and then this big thing happens at the end. And that wasn't particularly original, considering there's some bits in this film that did feel quite fresh and original.
Definitely.
It is a shame, but I think with all these MCU films, as much as we're fans, you've got to see that there is a bit of a formula to them.
Yeah.
And, it's just kind of part and parcel of it, really, isn't it? Yeah.
I think one thing that's not really a spoiler because it comes up before the film starts, but the Marvel logo being silent and just Chadwick Boseman was a really nice touch.
Yeah.
I know they did it before for the first, I can't remember what film, but the first film after he died.
Yeah, I think the first film, or maybe even was I was going to say Netflix, a Disney Plus release that was, whatever it was, the first thing that came out. I have no idea at this point.
No.
It was a year or two ago now.
Yeah.
It would have been,
But I was like, that's a nice touch. And it kind of does, I know we just watched the first one, but it does remind you of like, oh yeah, I really like this character. And it makes that kind of hit at the start of the film hit harder.
Yeah. I would say so.
So shall we go?
I think we're going into spoilers. Then. Yeah. So where do you want to start? Namor, I guess, is someone you brought up early on there.
Yeah. So Namor is the villain.
Namor is the villain.
When we first see there's some underwater shenanigans going on, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be Namor, isn't it?
Okay. Cool,
and I think I don't know too much about the character. I know of Namor. I know what he's like, and I was like, I thoroughly enjoyed his character.
It was quite a nuanced performance compared to what I've seen of Namor. The bits I've read is when he pops up and he's basically just like an arrogant dickhead, and occasionally will like join sides, and that's kind of what they did with this. So I'm quite happy with that.
I kind of like how like he's a villain, but you kind of see his point of view, and he's not entirely wrong.
Yeah,
and even the Wakandans agree kind of at the end that he's not entirely wrong.
And there's points, that middle part with him and Shuri, and he's showing, is it Talocan, the which is like the kind of Mayan version of Atlantis, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's something that people seem to be upset about. At least I've seen comments, because it's like, just do Atlantis, and it's like it's fine, like it's not really a problem, and it's obviously to differentiate from how big Aquaman was.
It's already bordering on, this is like Aquaman. If they called it Atlantis, then it is a bit.
I do think when we saw it, there was trailers for Avatar 2, which of course features blue people underwater. And their inclusion in this, because they're blue when they're out of the water, it's like the oxygen thing. It does feel quite similar, and I think they're very, very, very lucky to have got it out before Avatar 2. But that's not a bad thing. Like the designs are cool.
The designs are cool,
They're not super. There's two like supporting kind of bad guys. They're not super memorable, but there's some good action. See, the bit with Okoye on the bridge
that's good. That's
really
good fun.
Out,
yeah, I think the Talocanians, they were good fun in general. We didn't see too much of them, but when we did, they were interesting.
Yeah.
I think we spoke last time about how lots of stuff happened in the first one. How would this impact later on?
Yeah, like
I think they dealt with it quite well. Like, firstly, the world stuff, Wakanda being in the world and being open.
Yeah, that bit with Angela Bassett doing the speech to the United Nations.
Queen Ramonda,
that's it. Yeah, very, very good stuff.
Yeah, and kind of showing that actually other countries will try and take advantage and stuff, but they're actually strong.
Do we think that as a podcast, they specifically target the French?
They purposely didn't make it the Americans.
Well, also it's a comment on colonialism in that part of Africa as well. Surely is that me thinking it a little bit too much into that?
Potentially that.
It kind of makes sense.
I do think they specifically chose not to make it America, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's also some of the stuff that I'm not going into the bad straight away, because it's not a fully bad thing, but some of the things that I thought were a little bit clumsier. I like Everett Ross, but I think it is very convenient that he gets dragged into this, which is the second Black Panther adventure. And some of that stuff wasn't the most fun part of it, where it's like, I liked how his ex was in it, the Thunderbolts girl or whatever.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts girl. But it's just like that part of it I felt could have been either reduced or even just removed if they didn't have him contracted to come back.
I liked seeing him, and I think he's a fun character. Yes. But in terms of the plot,
Yeah, it was just...
He's only there because he's a fun character.
And he was there so he could be like, this is what the Americans are doing, and feed it back, which works plot-wise, but it felt like it's a long film, we haven't mentioned. It's a 2 hour, 40-something minute film, and there's certain little bits that probably could have been trimmed a little bit.
But yeah, before we go into more...
I've got a couple of good bits.
So another thing that we talked about that happened in the last film is Killmonger's burning of the plant.
Yes, and that's quite key in this, isn't it?
It is, like, it's the whole... And I think it's even the reason T'Challa died was because they didn't have that, essentially.
Yeah, so the kind of implication is that if they had more to kind of top him up, that he might have been able to fight off the mystery disease. Yeah. And there's some comments like, he didn't even tell us, it's really sad. And that's obviously a reflection of the real life events there a little bit. I heard there was some interview with Ryan Coogler, the director of both these films, where he said that a short time before, pre-production, he had a conversation with Chadwick Boseman about sending the script over, and he was very kind of blasé and was like, "Oh, send it another time," and then passed away like literally like a week later.
Bloody hell.
So he didn't even tell people that he was kind of working with. Yeah. But it's obviously his whole thing.
His decision.
It's not something to particularly get into now, but it apparently the script didn't change massively. It's just the kind of lead characters, which may be why certain bits of it don't feel like they gel, and maybe in the full way. But they kind of have Shuri as a lead instead. Don't they?
And we'll get into that in the negative.
Yeah,
but I think
they do some good stuff with her. I think.
Yeah, I like Shuri as a character. I think she is good in this. I just don't think she's quite a lead.
I think they do something quite clever where she kind of has the kind of grief arc that Black Panther did in Civil War.
Yeah,
where she mentions early on she wants to watch the world burn. And she kind of goes in that direction towards the end and is redeemed. We get the great cameo from Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger,
which was great.
Really good to see him.
Fun character. I was going to say another thing that I quite liked that was fairly subtle in a way of like, oh look, we're doing this. Is that it was a very female-led film.
Very much.
Like you've got Shuri, you've got Queen Ramonda, you've got Okoye, Nakia. Riri Williams.
There's a new
Anika.
Anika,
It's only really Everett Ross and M'Baku and Namor that are major male characters. And it's not like advertised. This is a female film. Look at all these female. It's just natural. They don't need to spell out.
And it wasn't something until we had discussions like leaving the cinema that kind of came to mind when we were just talking through characters.
Yeah, I was like, oh, actually,
which is the way to do it. Because
it is the way to do it.
There's nothing wrong with being like, this is a fully female-led film and all that, but some people kind of fight back against it if it seems too and like, not force is the wrong word because I don't believe it's force, but do you see what I mean?
It kind of
it can be done in a better way where it doesn't feel like it's doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah,
almost,
I feel like there's that scene in Endgame where all the females.
That's what I'm thinking.
Which I was never quite a fan of because although it's cool to have those characters together, it was, hey guys, look at us! Look at all these female characters we've got.
Forced. It's like, why are all the women all in one place? Also, Black Widow, the founding member of the Avengers, isn't in that scene because she's died. So it's like, it feels like a miss almost.
Yeah, whereas this was just natural, where actually these are just the characters. It's just that most of them are women, and because they're strong characters. I thought that was a real good point.
And we talked a little bit last time about the kind of general designs and the look of the film. I think a lot of that really comes through. I think there's a couple of new suit designs which I didn't particularly love. There's some blue suits which I thought were a bit weird.
Oh, they were weird.
I don't really know that. I guess that pulls from the comics in some way, but even cinematography and stuff, there were some bits that were almost more like, and this is going to sound really bad, more like Eternals in kind of like slightly more artistic, like either sweeping or really, really close up character shots. And we get some really good locations and stuff. So
I think
visually, I think it's very good.
But that leads me into more negative sides. I feel one thing that stood out in the first one was, as we said, that Afrofuturism. This, we get lots of Wakanda, we get lots of Talokan, but we don't see it in the same way we saw Wakanda. It's a smaller scale. You don't see the fun, quirky bits as much.
I mentioned on the way out of the cinema, there's one little square of a market that we see about 4 times in Wakanda. And there's a bit where Shuri's like thinking back and she's like, should I make the right decision? And it flashes to that same bit. And it's like, what's everyone's obsession with this little corner here? There were certain bits that did feel like they were maybe on the volume or something like that. You know, the set that they used for Mandalorian and stuff like that.
I feel like the first one showed Wakanda so much better.
Yeah.
And I felt similar with Talokan, where you've got this underwater sitter.
Yeah.
You could show so much and it could look incredible, but you don't really see much of it.
It's like dark and it's murky, and we get like this kind of like, lots of children waving. And then he's like, also, I've got this sun. And then the sun like comes out and it's like, so what is it? Are they in the darkness unless there's a visitor here?
It's kind of weird to say, but I think Aquaman did it much better.
Yeah, I liked how over the top Aquaman was, and like even you have like the octopus drumming, and like they were riding sharks. In this, they did ride the whales and stuff, but there was just something. I know they were trying to do it a bit more like down to earth, a bit more Avatar-like in a way, and like kind of tribal and stuff. But there was a bit of a disconnect between like the supposed technology they had and the reality of it. And
I think it was missing like an iconic shot of Talokan from afar.
Well, that big palace bit, they should have gone in and there should have been like a whole auditorium of like people waiting to see them, and they're all like cheering, or maybe like underwater fireworks or like a fish show or something.
Yeah,
you know
something.
Something like that. It was just dingy, and then there was a sun. Yeah, I mean, we're fully into the bad stuff now, aren't we?
Yeah, so I think another side from that as well is that this film, it goes in and says, right, Wakanda is this superpower, and then you've got Talokan as this other superpower. But I never really got that sense from them. Like,
no,
Wakanda feels like the Talokan,
even technologically, we get that.
Like Namor attacks them in Wakanda, and it's just kind of a standard battle.
Well, he says like, I've brought like the small team, and he keeps going on about this like endless army he's got.
Yeah.
We see at the end, there's a shot where it zooms out and there's like 30 Wakandans, which is the same 30 that fought in the last film seemingly. And then there's like loads of Talokan people like as barnacles on the side, but they're all just waiting their turn. It's like it feels very like, oh shit, we didn't include as many, just copy and paste like 100 of them on the side.
Yeah, it really didn't feel like either of these societies were superpowers.
Yeah,
like
I don't know if he was supposed to be.
It keeps telling you that
was he bluffing though, or was it because it felt more like he really has this like legion of fish people there?
Maybe he had fish.
Yeah, maybe, because he didn't specify, did he? There was some weird stuff as well. Like they had those water bombs that were like they'd explode a little glass thing and loads of water would come out, and that does end up killing Queen Ramonda, and that scene's quite good and quite touching. Came out of nowhere, I would say.
And the fact that she basically sacrifice herself to save Riri Williams.
But it's just like, I don't believe that like a bomb that shoots water out is that powerful or dead. No. I guess it's a concussive thing, but it just seems a bit
How
weird.
much water can you fit in there?
I think they can. It's like compressed, I guess, but they had this weird, like I say, disconnect between the technology they were supposed to have, even their breathing masks. It's like we had no indication that they had the ability to make that. We didn't see like with Wakanda, you see this technology, you see Shuri's lab. And it's just, it just didn't sit with me. And it felt maybe there was a deleted scene or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the fact I could have kind of given this a lot of pass if it had a strong ending, but it was kind of like, oh, okay, it's just kind of ended.
It just kind of ends, yeah.
And I mentioned to you after that in our cover of Black Panther, I suggested at the end, maybe Black Panther and Killmonger could just become friends and be reluctant allies, and that's exactly what they did in this.
Yeah. And I'm really glad they didn't kill off Namor. I know that they've kind of learned that lesson not to, especially if it's not like a particularly famous actor stepping into the role. They've signed them on for 10 plus films now.
They could do a lot more of Namor, and he could be an ally in some films and then become a villain again.
I mean, he's quite present in lots of Fantastic Four storylines, so that should be something they take forward. There's a funny thing we've got to mention where his name comes from like child with no love, no more.
Yeah,
it's so silly. But I saw this tweet where this guy was going with his dad, who was Mexican, to the cinema, and he was like, "Oh, this is Namor," and the dad was like, "Is that anything to do with the?"
I saw the same.
And then
tweet,
it's
actually.
afterwards the dad was like, "Told you so," kind of thing. So it is obviously something that Spanish speaking people have noticed before, but it feels still like a very silly inclusion.
Yeah.
Just have it as his name, it's very silly.
Speaking of silly inclusions,
yes,
one of my least favorite post-credit scenes Marvel ever done, where it's like, oh, by the way, this character that's dead, he's actually got a secret son.
Yeah, and they call him the same name, and I would put money on the fact that in the next 10 years that kid will get aged up into at least teenage. Well, in 10 years he would be a teenager, wouldn't he? But yeah, I'm of the. So it's difficult because I'm not in a position to be casting Hollywood films, if you didn't realize, listeners. But if Chadwick Boseman hadn't died in such tragic circumstances, obviously death is always tragic, I don't think that recasting him would have been a bad move necessarily. I know that the general opinion was not to, and I see that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a franchise film, and they want to use T'Challa in some way at some point. And we didn't really go into how Shuri can't really hold a franchise together to save her life, but they don't have a lead in this film. They don't have a strong lead.
Yeah, so that was going to be my final point. But before that, I saw an interview of Chadwick Boseman's brother where he said Chadwick would want them to recast T'Challa because he wasn't so egotistical to think that he's the only one that can play T'Challa.
And I do think if he'd not been in Infinity War and the end of Endgame, I think they would have been more call to recast him if he just had the one appearance.
Yeah,
as we said, he's very charismatic. He seems like a really lovely guy all around, but I don't think that they need to hamper their own storylines just forever. At least it's good to give a bit of breathing room and everything. And obviously this film was planned out and Ryan Coogler was already on board, as I said earlier. The script was seemingly already done before he passed away, but it is a very kind of clumsy way of doing it, but I'm not surprised that they've gone down some route of doing it.
Yeah, anyway. So that, as you kind of mentioned, Shuri, I like Shuri, but she's not a main character, and you really felt, as we said, the missing a main character. Yeah, obviously it's sad circumstances, but when you're talking about a film, you have to talk about the film itself, not always the context around the film. The fact of the matter is, this film didn't feel like it had a lead character.
No,
Shuri is made to be the lead character, but she's not. She doesn't strong have enough.
The presence at all. And there's even there's some cool scenes. So when we haven't even spoken, she gets the Black Panther juice. She figures it out using the bracelet from the thing or whatever. Pieces come together. She has the suit. I could take or give, whatever it is.
Give or take.
Give or take. I'm a bit picky with some of the suits in general, but there is some good scenes when she kind of lands down in the council and she's like, I'm the Black Panther. There's some good stuff there, but the performance is just not, it's just not for me. There's something about it.
And I like her as a secondary character, but
I don't think she can do the jokey kind of character in the first one with serious moments. She's in Infinity War, she's got a little moment in that.
Yeah.
But she just doesn't have that kind of gravitas. She doesn't have that weight. And it's just, it ends in a weird way where M'Baku is kind of just the king, I guess, but it's not really said. He's like, I'm challenging, but she's not here. It's just, there's certain bits that I don't think they really knew what to do with.
I think Riri Williams was one of them, because
that's it. Yeah, that's the last bit.
So I was talking to someone at work today, and they were like, "Oh, apparently no spoilers, but Ironheart's in it." And I was like, "Yeah, she is. She's quite cool."
They don't give her the name either, do they? But,
no, I was like, "She's quite cool." I didn't think that she needed to be in it, and they were like, "Oh, is it just a cameo?" And I was like, "No, it's not.
She's in a lot of the film,
a lot of film as a central character, and I still don't really feel the need for her to be in it."
No, I think again she had some good moments in the scene in MIT or whatever when she's introduced. There's some great moments there. Okoye is one of my favorite kind of supporting characters, at least from all recent Marvel. She should be in more stuff. She's fantastic, and she works with Shuri being a bit kind of boring and
we had a great character arc for Okoye in this as well as one of the better bits.
And we get Riri Williams there as the kind of jokey, more Peter Parker character. That trio worked, but it works as a trio if you separate them.
Yeah.
And you look back on it and you go, I guess they were all the main character. It was just, I don't know, yeah. That was my main. I think that was the main feeling looking back on it, that it kind of it got away with that not having the main character for about a third or 2/3 of the film, and then you kind of realize, oh, no one's really stepped into the spotlight. And when Shuri finally does with 40 minutes to spare, it's like, okay, like it doesn't really work for me. But hey, you know.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of bits of trivia for us here. Please. We've got Tenoch Huerta, who played Namor. Didn't know how to swim before this film.
I did see that. Yeah, that's very funny.
When Ryan Coogler offered him the role and asked him about his swimming skills, Huerta simply replied, "I've never drowned before." He took swimming lessons afterwards in preparations for the role.
Very good.
It's very funny that Namor can't swim.
Funny. Yeah. And of course, really, he doesn't actually need to do that much swimming, does he? He pops out of the water every now. I mean, the character does, but the actor.
I'm not really sure you even see him swimming.
No, because it's a lot of he's got a lot of wings. That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like that. I like that they didn't really show. And Shuri rips one off at the end, doesn't she? It was pretty cool. That final fight was pretty good.
Where it's just the two.
It was quite brutal and heavy hitting, and you do see that Namor was really strong and all that, but it felt a bit floaty and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And the other one I've got, which was somebody that was missing, as Daniel Kaluuya was set to return as Wakabi, but dropped out due to scheduling conflicts with Nope.
I was going to say it's got to be Nope, yeah.
And they don't really mention him. Apparently Ryan Coogler said he's exiled.
They say, Ramora says, or one of them says to Okoye when she's getting fired, they're like, your husband something is banished. They just mention it like that.
But I think it's a shame because Daniel Kaluuya is obviously great. Hopefully there is space for him to return at some point.
That would be great, yeah.
Because even though he had his little bit of treason in the first one, he's
just a little bit of treason.
There's ways to bring him back.
Of course, yeah. Of course.
But yeah, so I think the final thing to ask is, did Black Panther, Wakanda Forever live up to the hype for you? Prod yes or prod no?
It's a difficult one, because I wasn't crazy hyped leading up to this, and although I watched the very, very first trailer, I didn't know masses about it going in, the kind of plot beats and stuff. I think I came out, I didn't think it was the best film ever, but I came out satisfied, so I'm going to go with the prod yes for that.
Fair enough. I think I wasn't overly hyped, but I think my hype was a bit higher than yours.
Okay, yeah.
And coming out of it, I think I was a little bit more disappointed than you.
Yeah, I guess not knowing anything at all, you kind of, your mind can go...
And... Yeah, like I said, I had similar feelings when
What did you think was going to happen? Actually, that's a good kind of closing question.
I thought it would be Shuri take over the mantelpiece, and it would be dealing with Wakanda. Wakanda dealing with, I don't know, another country waging war, maybe some terrorists or something.
Yeah,
maybe another superpowered villain who wants to steal vibranium.
About Doom and Latveria at one point. So I obviously that didn't come to form.
Something like that. Somebody going in trying to steal vibranium, and
the fact that they already had vibranium that then we didn't really see was a bit silly, wasn't it?
Yeah, vibranium doesn't really play a part in this apart from
they
established at the bit.
Yeah, and they go Namor's covered in it. All his jewelry is it, but it's gold instead, and theirs is always silver. It doesn't really.
But yes.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, I'm gonna say prod no.
That's all right.
So we've got one more of these silver screen projects before the end of the year that we will announce in due time. Hopefully you enjoyed this. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. And if you want to check out more stuff like this, check out the Project on Spotify and all podcast providers.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You should check it out.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.